The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
A guy calls me and he says to me, Rabbi, listen. He says, I love my daughter. She's about to get married. Is there a sigula? Is there something that I can do that would be a great zichut to merit, to see nachat, and to ensure that my daughter and her new husband will have a good life. I'll have nachat from them. They'll get along. They'll build a bayit neman b'Yisrael. I'll be able to sleep at night knowing that my daughter is by a person that's be'emet bal midah. Because, it's scary. It's scary. You marry your kid off to somebody. How many times in life we ourselves knew people that at first glance looked one way, and then one day something ticked them off, and there was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And this is by the way, this is the fear of every parent. No matter if you have a son or a daughter, doesn't matter who's getting married. You don't want your kid, God forbid, to fall into that has v'shalom. You know how many people, we should never know, fell into such situations. They thought they were marrying one person. And then life has a funny way of bringing things out of people, and sometimes the most ugliest things. And later on, they say, Shemai, I didn't see it. How didn't I know? How did I fall into this? But what do you mean? But I asked. I called his Rabbi. I called his best friend, his boss, his Rosh Yeshiva. No one told me anything. How come no one told me anything? We've heard this before. So this guy calls me up saying, Rabbi, tell me, is there something that I could do? A merit, a zichut, that my daughter should live a life of happiness, shalom bayit, good marriage. I only want the best for her. He was basically asking me for an insurance plan on his daughter's marriage. I wish I could write policies like that. Would have wrote it on my own daughter's marriage. I wish I could write policies like that. I said to him, there is one. There is one. Get her shown. You're so worried about your own daughter and her marriage? What are you ready to do for someone else's daughter and their marriage? I know of an organization that they run the weddings of hundreds of orphan and poor girls in Israel. And what they do is, the night that your daughter's getting married for $50,000 wedding, $75,000 wedding, $100,000 wedding. Okay, $200,000 wedding. But that same night, they marry off one of the very poor girls in Israel who don't have a thing. Either she's an orphan with no parents, or she's from such poverty that they can't afford a wedding. So the same night your daughter's getting married in America for $5,000. Did you hear that number, guys? Emet. For $5,000 they marry off this girl in a hall, with catering, with a photographer. I don't know what the flowers look like. With a band for $5,000. Because they hire these guys on such a constant, obviously they get everybody for the lowest they can possibly, but they got it down to a science. I said, listen to me. You want everything to work out for your daughter. You want her to have the best of life. You want her to be happy. You want her wedding to be the night she'll never forget and the beginning of the most amazing marriage. You want that for your daughter? Do it for someone else's daughter, and Hashem will do it for yours. Gershom, live bigger than just you. Go out there and do what you know you should be doing in your shalichut for Klal Yisrael. He says, give me the number. He tells me, give me the number. I gave him the number. He set it up. That one orphan girl, Be'emet, is going to get married the same night as his daughter. He spends $150,000 for his daughter's wedding in America. He sends $5,000 to Israel, and then he told me he sent another 3,000 because he wanted this girl to have a little bit better catering, not just the rock bottom, because that package is the rock bottom. You can understand. A little bit better of a catering, a little bit better of a photographer, so she'll have not just black and white pictures. No, I'm joking. She's gonna have nicer pictures to remember her wedding, right? Because after the night is over, 200 grand in the can. What do you have left? What do you got? You got the pictures. That's what you got. You got the pictures. So he wanted to have a little bit better pictures. So he says, I'm going to give a little bit more money for pictures. He ended up giving, instead of 5, he ended up giving 8 grand for a kala that's going to be married the same night of his daughter. Zeh l'umat zeh. Or in proper Hebrew, it would be probably zot l'umat zot. Hashem, when I married my daughter, I married off your daughter at the same time. I didn't just think about me, I thought about yours as well. Ger Shom. I'm living for the purpose of what you put me here for. Klal Yisrael. A year later, the guy calls me and he was so happy. The guy's crying on the phone and he says to me, Mazel Tov, Rabbi! She had a boy! I said, Mazel Tov, who? He says, who? The girl in Israel just had a boy. And so did my daughter on the same day. He married off these 2 girls the same night. He was zocher to hear that they're both making Brit Milah on the same morning, on the same day. Happiness is when you go and take a girl that had nothing from a home that she lost her father, and she's an orphan, and you marry her off, and she sends you a letter in the mail, writing with dma'ot, how she prayed for your daughter the same night that she was getting married. She was getting married, and she prayed for your daughter under the chuppah to have a baby boy that year. And your daughter prayed for that girl the same night in Israel to have children that year. And you get this letter hand-printed from a girl you never met that you married. You married her off. You paid for a whole wedding. The feeling, not $1,000,000 can't buy that feeling. That's true happiness. That's a happiness you feel so accomplished. You feel so, you feel so purposeful. That's happiness. That's not pleasure. That's real.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org